You know, I can't hear anybody now. The sound is cutting out.
We're being very quiet.
Hey, Brad.
I'm still here.
This is Sally here.
Okay, Sally's on.
Yes, I found it in your weekly update. I
Oh.
knew I'd seen it.
Okay, so
Well, then, can
we
I call the meeting to order, or
Yeah.
do we need to do something else?
I think we can go ahead and call it to order. I believe we have 8. So Peggy, do you
Okay.
want to do roll call?
I will. I'll run down alphabetically. Just announce their name by a yes. John Bacon. Kathy Bush.
Yes, I'm here.
Carolyn's here in person. Sally Cobble.
Yes.
Dina Horst.
Here.
Jim McNeese.
Here.
Steve Roberts is in person. Janice Shaver.
Here.
Janet Raw.
Here.
And Ken Willard. So we have 2 absent.
Okay. So, we need to approve the agenda for today. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Kathy Bush will move.
Is there a second?
Dina, second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. So we've approved the agenda, and then I believe we have someone that's going to talk about the temporary and permanent regulation changes for us.
Correct. Correct. I'll walk you through the process of what we'd like to do. First of all, I want to thank everybody for having this special meeting for the sole purpose of, if we can get these across the street to the 2 departments, the AG's office and the Department of Administration, a little in advance of next week's meeting, it just increases the likelihood that our licensure staff will be able to start processing any of these licenses by July 1. And that way it helps our staff, but most importantly, it helps the people out in the field that are wondering whether they need to pick up classes, so it just gives, with the short time frame of June, it gives them 1 more week to be able to process this across the street. So the first thing we'll do is, in attendance here, department staff, we have Scott Gordon, Scott Myers, and Susan Helbert. And Scott Gordon is going to describe to you the process and where we're at, and kind of the difference between the temporary as opposed to what will eventually be permanent regs. And then Susan and Scott Myers will walk you through the actual proposed regulations that are in front of you. So, Scott?
Good afternoon, this is Scott. I've provided you an explanation of the kind of the process of where we're at in the board materials. The quickest summary that I can give you is we need to have some regulations in place to go in effect July 1st. The Rules and Regulations Committee is anticipated to meet June 30th or shortly before then. We needed to get at least the temporary regulations in front of them on their agenda by June 19th. That's a very short turnaround. That means we have to have them approved by the Department of Administration and the Office of the Attorney General prior to June 19th. That's why we've asked for this meeting today instead of next week. What happens is, if you approve the set of regulations that we're proposing today, you are actually you're approving temporary and permanent regulations. They are one and the same. The difference will be, after they are approved by the Rules and Regulations Committee, the temporary regulations go in effect for 120 days. The purpose of a temporary regulation is to make us in compliance with the statute that goes in effect July 1st. During those 120 days, you will have the open hearing and the rest of the process like you always have for a permanent regulation. The goal being, by the time the 120 days expires, we've already been through the rest of the process, so that there's no gap there. So that once we get the permanent version of the regulations approved by the AG's office and the Department of Administration and the Rules and Regulations Committee, you hold a public hearing like you always do. You adopt the regulations at the end, and you have permanent regulations.
Any questions on the process?
It's pretty clear cut.
I have a kind of a procedural question, and mainly for our listeners. Is somebody kind of going to go over and explain which ones will be temporary and which ones will be the permanent ones?
This is Scott. They're all the same. There's no difference.
Right. What you have, what we sent to you, this is what we're proposing to be our permanent regulations. We will just use them as temporary regulations until they go through the process. So they're one and the same.
Okay, all right.
That way there's not two sets. We just want to be able to use them temporarily by July 1 so we can process some applications before they become permanent.
I have a question. Then if someone applies for a license under the temporary time period, then, and they are granted a temporary license, then do they have to reapply for the regular one, or does it just roll over into that when the regulations are passed for the permanent one?
The termination temporary and permanent only refers to the regulation, and it has nothing to do with the type of license. So
Okay,
they won't
so-
have to reapply or anything. It's just July 1st,
Okay.
those are the new rules.
Yeah.
So if they are granted a license under the temporary time period, they are granted a license?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, what we'll do is, and we're going to follow the format that was in your board notes, and Susan will walk you through, when you look at the regulations, what's in white is what you've already approved. And what Susan will do is walk you through what has been added to align to the statute, which is highlighted in your materials. So, but she's going to work from the notes that you had in your board notes to kind of walk you through.
So we can look at the notes. We don't have to go through all 90 pages or however many.
Right. She may refer to page numbers, but she'll be working from the notes.
Right, and what I'm going to summarize is essentially the language, what's in the actual reg.
Okay.
So to get us started, again, because I don't think we can say it too many times, the set of regs that you're considering include the amendments that you've already approved, plus additions to incorporate the statute requirements. And so it's the yellow highlights that are the statute requirements. So I'm going to review those changes, and I'm pretty much going to walk you through step by step. And as Brad said, you can follow along with those numbered and bulleted items at the bottom of your board materials page. So I think we need to remind everybody what's common, what did the statute say. Remember that the additional changes are for an individual who will be applying for a Kansas license as a secondary teacher, and they have a commitment for hire from a Kansas district. And then they have to fit into one of three criteria or situations that the statute established. And if all this goes, if they fit into all of this, they're not required to complete teacher preparation. That's basically what the statute said. So now what we're going to do is look at each of those three situations one at a time, and I'll explain what we wrote into the regulations. Okay, the first one, an out-of-state license holder who meets testing requirements set by you, the board, and remember that they have to have a commitment for hire. So KSDE would no longer require these individuals to verify their teacher preparation program. So the requirement to submit verification of their program completion during our application process was removed from the regulation. And remember again, this is for people who already have a commitment for hire and they're applying at the secondary level.
Okay.
You can see those changes in 91-1-204, which is our out-of-state regulation, and those changes are highlighted on pages 2 and 3. Now, another thing, for all of the changes that we're incorporating the requirements of the statute, we've defined the license level as grades 8 to 12.
Good.
Are there questions on that one?
Susan, when you talk about commitment for hire,
Yes.
what will they have to submit? Some kind of a letter from the district?
The application form will probably have a little assurance statement that a superintendent would have to mark and sign.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the second situation, a STEM degree holder with 5 years of experience in the subject matter. So what we did here is we created a new license called a STEM license. And remember, again, they have to have a commitment for hire, and they also have to have 5 years of full-time work experience in that subject. So the regulation will require an undergraduate or graduate degree in one of the subject matter areas of life science, physical science, earth and space science, math, engineering, computer technology, finance, or accounting. And those are the degrees that were indicated in the statute. We broke down science just a little bit to make it easier for applicants to understand those degrees. And again, this would be issued for grades 8 to 12. It would be a license valid for the current school year. It's limited to the hiring district and to the subject matter that we specify on that license. So if they have a degree in biology, it would be to teach biology. And this type of license, the STEM license, would be renewable each year just simply with application and verification of employment, either with continuing with the same district or they would be allowed to move to a different district. And you can see the requirements for that license. It's in 91-1-203, and it's on page 18. And there's a fairly large section, but when you look at it, it basically says the same things, the same requirements that I just presented.
Real quick question here. Physical science, I assume that includes chemistry and physics.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Susan, Earth and space science, they would have to have those?
No, those would be types of degrees like maybe astronomy.
Or could it be separate?
Yeah,
Or is
that's a
that
broad category.
Because you're talking about science, that the and space is just because space is at the end of all the sciences.
Yeah, it's kind of a broad category that we could fit. There might be, we'll find a number of degrees that fit into that. It also aligns with the licenses that we issue are categorical, and Earth Space is one of those.
Okay.
So the types of courses that they'll be looking for teachers to teach would fit under that broad category too.
All right. Thank you.
The final criteria or situation that the statute addressed is that an individual holds an industry-recognized certificate in a technical profession and has 5 years of experience in that technical profession. And again, I'm going to remind everybody that they also have to have a commitment for hire. So what we did on this one, and this is in Regulation 91-1220 on page 9, we added a new paragraph to the Career and Technical Education Permit Certificate that's already proposed, that you've already approved. And the new paragraph to accommodate this is an or option. So we said this, what the statute said, or, and then we relist all of the requirements that you guys have already approved. And so if a person has an industry recognized certificate and the 5 years of work experience, we would issue them a CTE permit certificate that would allow them to teach full-time in a pathway relevant to that technical profession. So it's this, or, and then all the other options that you already have proposed and approved. And so all those other options for that CTE permit certificate, we just simply maintain those. Are there questions on that one?
I do have a question that kind of goes to 2 and 3. Does each one of them require 5 years of experience? How is that going to be verified?
Well, right now, anytime we require any kind of verification, we usually provide a simple form for them to use. We found that's the easiest way. So the other option that we could do, especially on the permit certificate, is allow the hiring administrator to verify that and then indicate that on the form with an assurance statement. And we do that currently with our technical certificates, and that seems to work well.
So in the STEM area, they'll have to get a former employer to verify their experience, or
I don't think we're not that far on the form yet, but we're leaning towards, again, having the administrator verify that and then an assurances statement on the application.
okay.
You mean the district?
And Susan,
The hiring district.
I have
Administrative.
a question on B2. I know we've already approved that particular one, but when I look at line 3, it says verification is dependent upon the content and may include success completion. Is that supposed to be successful completion?
Are you in Regulation 220?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's 9.
Yes, we will correct that.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, these will all go through the public comment and through the normal process. We will just be working with them as temporary regs until it goes through that process. But
Right.
What were we correcting on page 9?
to successful.
Successful.
Good catch.
Yes.
And again, probably the biggest difference from what the statute did was verification that they have been offered employment. So to make it more streamlined, we want the employer, the superintendent or the school district, would then submit certain stuff to us instead of receiving it from them and the applicant. But our staff will have a lot of work to do between now and the end of the month to develop the new applications and And again, doing this a week in advance allows this process to get started across the street, and then allow our staff time to develop the applications to get those ready.
So just for clarification, your intent is with these that are having to show that the district has a position for them. The district will be asking for the license rather than the individual?
Well,
Or will the individual ask and then get some statements from the superintendent, for example?
It'll be a coordinated application process. We have some now, like the restricted teaching license, where the applicant and the district collaborate together, and there's a portion that the applicant fills out, and then there's usually an assurances section where they say this is what we're hiring them to teach, that kind of thing, and where they can verify, yes, I'm going to hire them. They can verify employment. So it'll be a joint application that they'll probably coordinate and then mail it to us until we can get it as an online application.
All right.
and we already have some districts that have called that we've been visiting with. But again, this will allow our staff to get a head start on the application process.
So are there any other questions? No, I'm hearing any. Do I hear?
Hey, wait a minute. This is Sally. I don't have any questions about anything, but am I the only one that is concerned about doing this in 8th grade and level? I must be.
Sally, one thing that, especially the technical permit certificates, some of those introductory level exploration kinds of courses in pathways are taught in the 8th grade, is my understanding, and this would allow those teachers to teach those introductory level.
Okay. That helps me. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Then again, I would ask for a motion that the Kansas State Board of Education approve the submission of both temporary and permanent licensure regulations
So
to
moved.
the
This
Department of
is
Administration
This is
and
Steve.
the Office. Huh?
so moved, Steve.
I think Steve puts it.
What?
I think Steve said so moved.
Oh, well, I wasn't finished reading the motion.
I'm just eager.
The motion as printed in our agenda, okay?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Are you done?
to approve it.
And I'll
No,
second it.
Who is it?
Dina.
Dina seconds the motion. Now, is there further discussion before we have our roll call vote? Okay, then Peggy, I'll let you call the roll.
Okay, just want to make sure, John, you didn't jump online anytime, did you? John Bacon? Okay. Then if you'll just reply yes or no in favor of the motion as printed in your packet. Kathy Bush?
Yes.
Carolyn? Sally Cobble?
Yes.
Dina Horst?
Yes.
Jim McNeese?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Janice Shaver?
Yes.
Janet Waugh?
Yes.
And making sure Ken Willard didn't jump on the line? So that's 8-0 with 2 absent, being John Bacon and Ken Willard.
Thank you. Well, then the next thing, if there's no further discussion, the next thing on our agenda is to adjourn. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say before we adjourn?
Yeah, I would. This is Steve. I just applied for a position to teach physics in DeSoto, so wish me luck on that.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I don't know what. Oh, okay. Good luck.
Well,
All right.
Jen, on behalf of the agency, we do appreciate you, all the board members, having this agenda item a week in advance to allow our staff to begin working on applications and getting it across the street.
And I'd like to thank board members for making themselves available today. So thank you, everybody.
We need to vote on the adjournment.
The adjournment.
Do we vote on adjournment or just adjourn?
Not normally, if you just want to note the time as being 4:31.
Yeah, I think we just adjourned the meeting. So have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye.